Yeah, as I was saying, you're not going to give one of those fiery Pascal speeches. I'll leave that to Warren, but I'm going to be sharing today on part 3 of Think and Grow Rich, which is a book by Napoleon Hill, where he teaches on the principles of growing wealth that he took from interviewing about the 20 richest people of his time and put it all together, what they had in common and what they all did to grow wealth. So for those of you that are looking to grow wealth, this will be a great lesson for you. And even if it's not so much wealth you're looking to do, like you can pretty much apply these principles into anything, as I've been saying the past few weeks, whether it's you've got health goals, you've got spiritual goals, financial goals, or anything. These principles can be redirected to any of those. Yeah, I need to be made a co-host so I can share my screen. All right, yeah. Here we go. So as usual, if you guys do have any questions or comments pop up as we go along, just feel free to type in the chat or anything. I'll stop when I need to, and if not, we'll wait till the end and we can go through questions, feedback, and biggest learnings. So just to quickly recap what we've done the last few weeks, the first week was more just an overview of everything, and I mentioned in the first week that that would be more of an overview just to get the idea and feel for what we're going to be covering over this month. Then these next few weeks, so last week it began, but this week and next week, it'll just be diving into a couple of the principles more in depth rather than just a overview style. So that was the intention of this whole series that we were doing, was to give an overview and then dive into them as the weeks went on in a more practical sense, I guess you can call it, to focus a lot more on the detail rather than overview. Now, to get started, who wants to volunteer to read the prayer of Yeshua?
I'll do it, Ed.
Yeah, thanks, Christine.
O thou from whom the breath of life comes, who fills all realms of sound, light, and vibration. Your light is experienced in my utmost holiest. Your heavenly domain abides in me. Your will is manifested in the universe, all that vibrates, just as on earth that is material and dense. Thank you for your wisdom, understanding, and assistance to manifest our daily needs. Dissolve the fetters of faults that bind us as we let go of the guilt of others. Let us not be lost or caught up in superficial things like materialism, common temptations, but let us be liberated from everything that keeps us from our true purpose. From you comes the all-working will, the lovely strength to act, the song that beautifies all and renews itself from age to age. Amen.
Amen.
Sealed in trust, faith, and truth, and I confirm with my entire being.
Yeah. Thanks, Christine. All right, well, what we'll do now, now that we've set the framework and got into the right energy space, is a quick recap as I've of the last 2 weeks, just so then we can regroup everything that we've covered and then be ready to move into the next week, today's session, I should say. As you remember, there's 13 key principles to grow wealth. If you haven't seen the first 2 sessions, I suggest you go watch the replay of those because it will really help you understand a bit more in detail, because I'll just be quickly recapping these. Then it will be a good idea. But just for everyone who has attended the last 2, we'll quickly go through them again just to remember them and then be able to see how they complement the next few that we're going to go through today. Now, building wealth, according to Napoleon Hill, actually no, more according to me, is like a game of Jenga, because those of you that have played Jenga, you're wanting to stack the tower up. If even one of the wrong block comes out, the whole tower collapses. So although it may not fully collapse if you don't have one principle in place, it can certainly take an effect on all the other ones. So all 13 principles, it's not kind of like 13 separate tips. The aim of building wealth, you want to synergize all of the 13 principles together, develop all of them, and that's where the true power, I guess you can say, comes from, when you have all of them working together and all of them well developed. If one of them isn't developed, but all of the other ones are, then although you can still build wealth, it may not be to the same degree or level that you can. Kind of like a body part. If you, that's another analogy to think of it like, is that we've got plenty of body parts. If one of our body parts, like let's say if your left foot isn't functioning, although you can still function as a person, it won't be to the same level as if you were a fully functioning person, if you had all of your body parts in good order. So as much as you can, think of it like a body, or think of it like a game of Jenga. Focus on developing all of these principles and you'll be pretty much well on your way to building wealth. Principle 1, desire. Principle 2 is faith. Principle 3 is autosuggestion. Basically like affirmations, as you remember, basically just, yeah, autosuggestion. You can just think of it like another word for affirmations, or talking to your subconscious. I guess you can say manifestation, that kind of thing. Principle 4 is specialized knowledge. Principle 5, imagination, which is basically your ability to birth ideas and be able to think of new ways to do things. That's what imagination is. Organized planning, being able to plan well and be able to actually put a plan together of your dreams or your ambitions. Decisions, being a quick decision maker, being sharp with it. Persistence, obviously the ability to be persistent and resilient, not give up, and be able to go all out and achieving your goals. Power of the mastermind, so forming the right alliances, forming the right communities, high-level communities, wealth communities, you can say, and being part of a bigger group rather than just trying to do it on your own. You actually want to be part of a well-run mastermind, we can call it. Principle 10, you want to develop mystery of sex transmutation, which is just basically where you direct your sexual energy. A lot of people direct sexual energy into sex, as we know, but this book, as well as many other ones, talk about how you can actually direct sexual energy into business or into finances, because as we know, sexual energy is one of the most powerful energies or forces out there. And if you can direct it into the right areas, it can amplify results. Principle 11 is the subconscious mind, the ability to develop your subconscious mind, because as we know, the subconscious mind is the one, it doesn't know what's real and what's not. So as long as you're feeding it good thoughts and good ambitions, it can manifest things into you as long as you put in the action. Principle 12 is the brain. So basically the conscious version of the subconscious. The subconscious is more innate in you and the root of everything, whereas the brain is more the surface level and the conscious thing that actually goes out and does the actioning. And then lastly is the sixth sense, your intuition, you can call it. Sixth sense is just another word for your intuition or gut feeling. Plenty of wealthy people talk about the importance of having a good intuition, trusting themselves, and just getting messages from the divine. Some people credit that to their sixth sense, when you actually can communicate to higher beings or higher frequencies, whatever you want to call it, and then be able to get messages from it. Now, last week what we went through was the first 4 principles more in depth. So I want to quickly take you through those again. And then today's focus is going to be on the next 4, which is principle 5 to principle 8. That's what we're going to be focusing on today. But just so we could quickly recap what we went through yesterday, last week, I'll do that now for a couple of minutes or so, just to refresh everyone. Remember the practical steps that go into these 4, and then we'll be able to go into the next 4. I'm guessing today will probably be about half an hour again, 25 minutes or so, half an hour, which that way, the shorter the better, just because we have a really, really clear topic that we focus on. And then whatever your action steps are, you can go out and action them related to what we go through today. So expanding a little bit more on the first 4 principles, just this is what we went through last week, is that desire is where everything starts in building wealth. Desire is ultimately what feeds it, what fuels you, and what helps you go out and do it. There's a difference between desire and fantasy is a big thing we were focused on as well. Desire is this feeling and this burning sensation that you actually want to go out and make something happen. Desire wouldn't be there with you if you didn't feel like you could achieve it. For example, a fantasy goal rather than a desirable goal is something that you would like to have, that you think would be cool if you had it, but you don't actually have this feeling that you can go out and do it. That's why, let's say, for example, you might be dreaming, or you might be having a fantasy of laying on a tropical island tomorrow, having a lot of money coming into you residually from investments or from a business that you maybe started, and then just having pina coladas on the beach and all that, looking out into the ocean. That might be a dream that you have, and being there tomorrow. Obviously, you may, if you don't really have many sensations that go with that picture that you're creating, the easiest way to determine whether it's desire or fantasy is the emotions and sensations that come with it. A fantasy, you more get a nice image or you get a nice picture of it, but there's not really many sensations that come with it, or feelings or emotions. Whereas desire, you get a picture and you also get these emotions and feelings that come to it, that you want it so badly or that you really want it and that you're hungry to get it. That desire, if you feel those emotions, then you probably wouldn't feel them if you didn't feel like it was possible that you can achieve it. That's basically how you determine desire. And if you have those emotions, then the chances are you probably can achieve it if you would know the laws of manifestation. So desire is really important to understand, just because that way, whenever you're doing anything in life or anything, especially financially, you want to make sure you actually have that desire. Because what a lot of people tend to do is they will start a business or they will get into investing just because they want to have money. But the desire was never actually there to begin with. They just felt obligated that they needed to do it to increase their money or increase income, but they never actually had the desire to do it. So if they never had that desire, they won't get as good results, just because you're not actually being driven by anything. You're more just being driven by the idea or the fantasy. Whereas when you're being driven by the desire, you'll be willing to do stuff. You'll be willing to be persistent and be able to do stuff that may be a little bit more uncomfortable and that you'd rather not do. Whereas if you don't have that desire, you'll be more prone to things like procrastination, laziness, and just different things. So establishing that desire is really important. And just before I continue, because I do want to spend a bit of time going through it, kind of think of it like the gym. Think of someone who's trying to lose weight at the gym, someone who has a real desire to lose weight, compared to someone who just thinks it would look good if they were fit, or they kind of think it'd be nice. They'd rather be fit, but they don't really care if they lose weight or not. Which one's going to get better results? Well, obviously the one who's really determined to do it just because they have that desire. So apply that same mindset or concept into your finances, and you'll be able to understand what that means. These are the 6 steps to turn desire into money. Number 1, be specific and definite. Make sure it's actually a specific amount you're looking to do. When you're setting a goal, when you're setting a desirable goal, make sure you actually have a specific amount, not just something broad. Determine what you'll give in return, so something that you'll actually be willing to do practically, because otherwise it's just a dream if you're not willing to do anything for it. Number 3, establish a date, so a target date. Number 4, create a plan. Number 5, write out all of the above. And number 6, auto-suggestion is what you want to do. So reading it to yourself twice every day, because that will feed into your subconscious and it'll be more likely to manifest. Also, when you're setting goals and like when you have a desire, you want to make sure that you can see, feel, and believe yourself already in possession of the money, rather than feeling like it's ages away. Feel as if it is already there with you in the moment, and now it's just manifesting into the physical. Principle 2 is faith. Faith, what we're talking about, is the next building block from desire to turn a dream into tangible reality. So desire is the ability to want something, the ability to have that dream or have that really strong feeling that you want to go out and achieve it. And faith is the ability to believe that you can go and do it. So as you can imagine, having faith is incredibly important. I remember the example I gave last week was, if you think of a sports game, for those of you that are into sports, you can see the difference between a team that plays with belief and confidence compared to someone who just plays through a system or plays with no emotion. The team with high confidence and high belief in themselves are nearly always going to run over their opponent and win the game. So same thing with finances. You want to be able to develop your confidence and develop your faith, because those are 2 really strong emotions that will help you go out and action things and even help you do stuff you'd rather not. And that's critical when it comes to building wealth. There's a few people I know on here that run businesses, and you will know the importance of having confidence and belief and doing things that you'd rather not do if you're wanting to create wealth. So having that belief and confidence that you can do it is really critical. Whereas if you have self-doubt or you have lack of belief, then it'll be a lot harder. Ways to develop faith is, the book especially talks about affirmation and repeated instructions to your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind, as we know, is what manifests things into reality. So that's why you want to feed it good thoughts and good intentions and constantly do that. And the way a method you can do it is through auto-suggestion, which is, like I said, basically visualization, affirmation, and that's meditation and that sort of thing. That's how you would develop faith. All thoughts which have been emotionalized with faith begin to immediately transform themselves into their physical equivalent or counterpart. Here are my tips to develop faith from my own learning. Obviously, you can take your own, but this is kind of what I got out of the book, and also just from my own experience of how to develop self-confidence and belief. Is number one, know your goal and plan. It's important that if you're going to have faith, to actually know what you need to have faith in. So knowing it and being specific. Number two, have always repeating affirmations and belief to your subconscious, whether that's through affirmations, like if that resonates with you, if beach walks resonate with you, to visualize, which is what I personally do. Do that, nature walks, meditation on the bed, or music, anything like that that kind of feeds our subconscious. That's the next thing. Number three, action, action, action. So I put that 3 times there because we all know the importance of action. You can tell these wonderful things to your subconscious, and you can have all of these great meditation sessions and visualize yourself in possession of it. But if you don't actually go out and action it, well, you're really just dreaming at that point. So it's important to go out and really action it and do any form of action that you can, even if it's just one thing a day. Number 4, observe and celebrate small wins. Rather than just waiting for a big win or waiting for yourself to achieve the goal that you have, actually notice the milestones and notice the small wins you get along the way and celebrate it. The reason you want to celebrate it is because it feeds you belief. If you just notice one small thing you did right, like if you just did one thing that you didn't want to, but that got a good result that day, then celebrate it, because that way you're training your subconscious and you're feeding it good thoughts and good belief. And it'll be more likely to go out and do it more. So you're really remembering to look after your subconscious and give it belief it's on the right track once you celebrate small wins. And lastly, reward yourself for reaching milestones. The reason you want to reward yourself in some form is because that way you're training your subconscious, like I said, to actually that whenever you reach a milestone, it gets rewarded practically. So if it means rewarding yourself, if that means going out for a nice dinner, paying for yourself, like to go on that, if it's to go on a holiday or whatever your idea of a reward is, just think of that and then reward yourself for reaching key milestones. So next one is auto-suggestion. Through repeated suggestion, faith can be built. So this is basically auto-suggestion. The means to go out and auto-suggest through faith and affirmations and whatnot. And the reason you want to do this is because it's basically communicating to your subconscious that whatever you're trying to do is what is going to manifest. Here are some ways that you can auto-suggest. Number 1, find a quiet place, whether that's your room, whether it's nature, like in the forest or the beach, somewhere isolated where there's no distractions. First, do that. Step 2 is repeat a specific goal to your subconscious. Number 3, do this twice a day. Number 4, listen to your intuition, because once you've actually done this every day, you'll notice that you start getting small messages, or you'll start getting feelings or sensations, or just actually being able to hear messages. So make sure you listen to your intuition and go out and follow it. And then number 5, action those messages. Always make sure when you're auto-suggesting to see, feel, believe yourself already in possession of your goal. That's a really key part of it, to actually see, feel, and believe yourself already in the possession of it. Now, when I mentioned about being specific rather than broad, here's an example that we gave. In a year from now, I will have lots of money and be able to enjoy life and help people. The money will come to me in divine right timing. The reason that's broad is because there's no date. There's no date that you're actually going to do it by. There's no specific amount you're actually wanting to manifest, because lots of money. Remember, your subconscious mind is exact. If all it hears is lots of money, well, that's subjective. So how will your subconscious mind know if, like, what a lot of money is to you? So that's why you want to be really specific so your subconscious mind knows. And then there's also no practical steps you're willing to give in return or do in return. That's why this is a broad affirmation. So imagine going to a personal trainer with no specific goals. The personal trainer will just be like, well, what do you want? I can't help you if you're not giving me specifics. So they'll generally ask you what weight do you want to get to, what kind of body fat or body levels do you want to get around, and then they'll be able to design the program around that. So you can kind of think of your subconscious like a personal trainer, that you're giving it a clear plan of what you want to achieve, and then trust your subconscious to actually put the program or put the action steps together. And then all you have to do is follow through with it, like exactly like you would if you were looking for a personal trainer or wanting to be in a gym. Here's an example of a specific affirmation. By the 1st of January, so straight off the bat, there's a date. I will have 50,000 in the bank. There's a specific amount, which will come to me in various amounts from sales commission investments during the time. In return for this money, I'll give the most efficient and best service by selling high quality and safe cars to people who need them. That's a service you're willing to do in return. So it ticks all the boxes, and you can write down your affirmation to what resonates with you. Doesn't really matter as long as it has the key things I mentioned there. And then from here, you'd find the way to improve sales skills and investing, and remember to celebrate the small wins along the way. Principle 4 is specialized knowledge. Desire, faith, and all this suggestion then needs to be action. The best way to action this, once you've got the key things in place, is then to seek out specialized knowledge or education in the area to make sure you can develop it, get a better logical understanding of the product or whatever you're trying to sell, whatever you're doing to build wealth. And then you need to actually acquire it, look for the right coaches, the mentors, or anything, because knowledge is only power. When it comes to acquiring specialized knowledge, remember, the key is that it's only potential power. It becomes power only when it is organized into definite plans of actions and directed to a definite end. So just because you get knowledge or get education, although it's a good start, it really doesn't mean anything as long as you put it into action. I'm sure you've heard a lot of people say that, like different educators you've listened to, those that follow Global Wealth Club. Stephen talks about it a lot. Stephen Pettit, he talks about it a lot, that knowledge is one thing, but actually actioning that knowledge is where the true results come. There's two types of knowledge, is general and specific. So general is better if you're more managing others. So let's say your goal is you want to achieve a certain amount of money through business. Then if that's what you're wanting to do, maybe general knowledge is the right path for you, especially if you're going to be project managing or just managing others who are doing the work. Whereas if you're doing the work yourself to build wealth, then you want to seek out specific knowledge in the area that you plan to build your wealth in. Remember, knowledge will not attract money unless it is organized through practical action steps. The ways to acquire knowledge is, there's probably more ways than this, but just to keep it simple, I put it into 5 ways. Whichever one resonates with you, you can do it through a few, anything. To acquire it is, number 1, through your own experience. That's probably the quickest way you'll learn, as we can all agree, is that when you feel the pain yourself, then you'll learn really quickly and hopefully not make the same mistakes. So that's definitely one way you can do it, is through your own experience. Number 2 is education through cooperation with others, or basically group education. This is what we call masterminds. Number 3 is college, university, and TAFE. Those are some better ones if you're more looking for a diploma, or you're looking for certifications and that type of thing, and you're looking for more theoretical learning to understand the mechanics or logistics of a subject you're wanting to be good at. A lot of professors or teachers, as we know in these different places, are more book smart than street smart and life smart. So if you're looking to be more book smart and kind of understand that side of things, then it's a good place. But obviously, if you're wanting education through people who have achieved real success, you're less likely to find them there. Number 4 is books, podcasts, and documentaries. Number 5 is one-on-one coaches and mentors. The key action step from this one is to set time aside every day to learn more about your specialty. Even if it's just something small, like reading a chapter in a book, if it's just listening to a video, watching a movie, watching a documentary, or chatting to a mentor or a coach, find something every day that actually educates you more and develops your learning. Those were the first 4 we went into. So today we're going to be going into the next 4 and seeing how they build on from there. So once you have those 4 in place, these are the next 4 that you want to work on developing and kind of working together. is number 5. Once you've got knowledge together and you've got a bit more educated, then you also want to work on your creativity, or in other words, your imagination. Now, desire is given shape and action through the imagination of your mind. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. That's why whenever you're working on setting a manifestation, you want to make sure that you see, feel, and believe it can be done. That's the key to achieving any success, as any wealthy person will tell you. The only limitation within reason lies in the use of your imagination and motivation to act. So whenever you're trying to achieve something, really the only limitation to actually get it done is by the lack of creativity, the lack of your ability to think of ideas, and the lack of motivation to act. That's really the main limitations. Great leaders of business, art, music, and literature become great because they develop the power of self-motivation. And self-motivation comes from a mixture of your imagination as well as what we talked about earlier, which is having faith. Then that's why when it comes to your imagination, you want to think of ways where you can do things better and more efficiently. The way that you actually think of more efficient and better ways to do things is through the use of your imagination. The chapter also talks about changes that are inevitable, because whenever you set goals in your life, especially high financial goals, there will obviously be things that need to change with your life, such as potentially your career, cutting certain expenses out of your life and whatnot. So there's plenty of things that will change as soon as you make the decision to go out and do it. And you want to be able to think of ways, think of those things that are going to be changed, and then just you may as well cut them out straight away rather than procrastinate or wait. That's what this talks about a little bit. But really what I wanted to more focus on, the angle I wanted to focus on today with imagination, was more the creative aspect of it, or the ability to birth ideas, you can say. Now, ideas are products of the imagination and at the beginning of any great fortune. So desire is number 1, as we know. Really, imagination is the next level up from your desire, because desire is the emotional aspect of it, the feeling side of it, and the desire to really want something, and the desire to win. That's what the first step of it. And then imagination is the actual ability to go out and do it and get creative and think of practical ways to do it. So it's kind of like the middle ground between having the desire to want it, the emotions to want it, and then the practical side of it to actually go out and actually do it. Imagination is the middleman between those two, is between the dreaming aspect and the practical aspect. This is the middleman. To improve your imagination, you must be in a creative flow. That's the key to it. So whenever you're trying to think of new ideas, think of new ways of changing things up, new strategies, and that type of thing. The key to doing that is by being in a creative flow or creative headspace. The ways that you can do it, if you want to think of it more in a practical sense and be able to get into the creative headspace, is there's lots of ways you can do it, but for the sake of simplicity, I've just broken it down to 4 main ones that a lot of people do, or a lot of wealthy people do, you can say, is these ones here. So whenever you're looking for ways to improve your imagination, these are things that you can do to actually to improve it every day. Meditation, visualization, and affirmation. That seems to be the most common one from different books we read, from what I've noticed. That seems to be the most common one. So one of those 3 there. So meditation, like, that's a great way, especially if you're more, I know some people are naturally more logical and more in your head. So if you're more in your head and you're more analytical, then focusing on developing this is going to be even more important for you. Like, for example, I know Warren talks about how he was naturally like that, a lot more analytical, and had to really develop his imagination and creative side. And it was really hard, but eventually he got there. So if you're in that same position as well, then you want to be ultra more attentive to this. So meditation is a great way, visualization and affirmation. If you're more analytical, then it'll be even more important for you. The way to do this is not just going to your bed, putting on music, and then just sitting there. You'll probably find that more structured training or a more structured checklist of how you can meditate or visualize may work better for you. So if you're in that boat, then maybe look for some kind of checklist or some kind of structured guide to meditate. Like you may even put on a guided meditation video or something like that, and that may be able to help you better than if you were just going to meditate in your own space and just put on music and hope for the best. So keep that in mind, is that if you're naturally not creative, then look for more structured ways to do it, because that will actually help you a lot more. Whereas if you are naturally more creative and more flowy type of person, then just stick with what you normally do, and less structure will work better for you. But it's really about knowing thyself at the end of the day. So yeah, keep that in mind. Being in nature is a good one. That's personally what I do. I find that works better for me than meditation and all that sort of thing. Just even going for a hike, going for a long walk, or anything like that. I'm not really going there with the intention to sit still. I find that when I go for walks or just go out to reflect in my own space in quiet places, like on a hike or on the beach or something like that, things just naturally come to me, whether it's in the moment or afterwards, just because it kind of settles my energy a bit. It is a good place to de-wind. I personally like to do it in the evening, just because I find evening works well for me. So also factor in the time of the day you do these if you're looking to develop your creativity. Because what often happens is that when you live through the daily grind of life, we would know that you naturally pick up energies, and sometimes your energy in your body can stagnate, and stagnation in your energy body is what causes you to block the creative aspect of your mind or of your soul. Whenever your energy is stagnant, that's what blocks creativity. So in whatever way you can release that block, you can call it, or release the stagnation of energy in you. That's what will unlock your creativity. So one thing I didn't chuck in there, which just came to my mind now that I said that, is actually energy healings. I know quite a few of you do energy healings and get good results from it. So I just forgot to chuck that in there, but that's definitely one way, is energy healings. For me personally, though, I just find that my energy clears naturally quite well when I'm just out in nature and not really thinking much and just walking. So that's one way. Art and music is another way. A lot of people can unlock creativity through learning an instrument, singing, playing the piano, drawing, painting, poetry, just anything like that. Anything that's artistic or musical is definitely another good way to develop creativity and naturally get more ideas come to you, because you're tapping into that space more. And another way is redirecting sexual energy. So that's one that I can't really share with you in terms of how to do that. There'd be a lot of other people do it, but really all you're doing when you're redirecting sexual energy is, rather than putting it into your dick as a guy, then you're really just channeling that into different sources, and more into your business, more into your finances, and then that will really amplify your emotions. Like, especially if you want to focus down and you want to get more ideas, then rather than channeling your sexual energy into your genitals or whatever, then channel it into your heart or into your mind. I know Warren has talked about Tantra before, and I believe that's a great way to do it. I don't personally know much about that, so but I do know it is a great way to be more creative, and if you learn Tantra or if you learn about redirecting sexual energy. So that's another great way to do it. So once you've used your creativity to birth the idea, your next step then is to bring structure and put it into a plan. Because it's one thing to get into a creative headspace, do all of these things, but then once you've actually done that, you don't just want to be like a loose type of person. There's a lot of creative people out there who are able to be creative and able to have unlocked energy, but then they're kind of just wandering around the place, like a bit loose in their mind, and they're not really structured. Those types of people rarely get wealthy. It's the people that are able to be creative and then also be able to be structured and more grounded that get the results. So you want to be able to be creative, but then also be more structured. And then that will be your next step, is to actually put it into a plan, which is where organized planning comes in as principle 6. So once you've developed this side to you, your next step is to balance it out with the complete opposite and being structured. So being able to plan. So if you're not naturally more structured, I know I personally am more this way than creative, but this may naturally come easier to you. If you're more a creative type of person, then you want to focus more on this than this. So whichever one is your weaker one, you want to focus more on developing that while also developing your stronger one. So the first step to transform all the previous building blocks into reality is through a plan. Everything we spoke about with the first 5 principles are more a birthing phase of it. So they're more the phase where you're dreaming or having a goal. The next step is actually putting it into a plan and actioning it. Desire without a plan is just a dream or fantasy, not a goal. And think of it like a gym. If you didn't have a plan to go out and lose weight and you were just doing random workouts, random diet, just eating when you felt like it, sleeping when you felt like it, chances are you're not really going to get good results. Whereas if you have a good plan and you stick to it, you probably will. If you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. That's a great quote. So fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. How to plan? Then I've kind of mentioned this through the last few weeks, but I thought I'd just put a slide up here just for those of you who haven't listened, or even those that have, so you actually have something in front of you, how you might plan. This actually wasn't mentioned in the book, but this is just from my own experience talking to different people like Stephen Pettit, who makes it really simple to actually plan. So you actually don't really need to spend too much time on planning, because planning is more just there as a guideline for you. You want to be spending the most time actioning it. So yeah, think of that. You only want to be spending time actioning it, but a plan is more just there to guide you and be like a blueprint. And as much as possible, try not to overcomplicate it. Remember, the simpler the better. Wealthy people like to keep things simple rather than overcomplicated. Now, a process that you may follow to actually put a plan together is step 1 is focusing on the macro, the bigger picture of things. The way you would do this is, a lot of people think a plan means having like 48 pages written out of what you're going to do every calendar day of the month, and what you're going to go out and what results you're going to get. That's what most people think. But when it comes to planning, first, just get the macro really clear, the outcome, the big picture. What are the key outcomes that you want to achieve, and when are the timelines you want to do it? So on the first page of your plan, you may have just 5 key outcomes, which takes you like 10 minutes to do, to just think about. Where if you're looking to be an investor, let's say, you might say in the next 3 months, you want to buy your first like crypto, which is making you X amount of money. Then that's your first goal. Second goal is you want to buy a stock which is producing you a certain amount of money through trading. Step 3 is you want to purchase your first property. And then step 4 is something else. That's more macro, because you're not really thinking about how you're going to do it. You're more thinking of the outcome that you want to have. So that's the first thing. Think of just outcomes, not how you're going to do it. Forget that. Think of forget how you're going to do it, and just think of what you actually want to achieve. And then write timelines with it. Step 2 is microing it down. So once you've got the bigger picture, the next step is to micro it. And you want to focus first on the first stage. So whatever your first outcome is, see if you can think of ways of how you're going to do it, and breaking it down into actionable steps that you want to do with timelines and target dates, and then go out and then do the others later as well. So every outcome you've got, focus on doing it one at a time, and then you can go from there. Step 3, identify and gather necessary resources. So once you've got that micro down, think of who you need in your life, like whether it's mentors, team members, people that you work with, that type of thing. We consider that resources. Whether it's financial resources you need, think of how you're going to do that, whether it's a loan from the bank, whether it's borrowing other people's money, whether you'll get investors involved or anything like that. Identify and gather those resources, and then most importantly, go out and action it. Principle 7 is decisions. After you've actually got a plan together, when it comes to actioning it, and actioning your plan, one of the biggest keys to doing it is being a good decision maker. After you've got a good plan, the key to take strong action and get results is to be decisive and sharp. You can't just go out and actioning it, because when I talk about actioning something doesn't just mean you go out and do random things all the time, and you go out and just do one thing, then jump to another, then jump to another thing, and then kind of keep yourself actioning. A lot of people think that just because they're spending a lot of time doing a certain task or working on a certain project, just because they're spending time on it, that means they're working hard and it means they're going to get results. A lot of people, you can say, they spend too much time on it and they think they're being productive. But even more so, if you spend, like what I said, simpler the better. So it's the same principle. Even if you're spending less time actioning something but getting good results, that's what ultimately matters. So the way that you would do that, and the way that you actually spend less time on things while getting better results, is by being smart and making wise decisions. So if I'm sure most of you here have read Rich Dad Poor Dad, but basically work smarter, not harder. The way that you work smarter is by making good decisions and not just kind of chaotically doing things because you want to feel like you're busy. That's a really key part of it. The studies have shown several hundred millionaires revealed that every one of them has the habit of being a quick decision maker and slow at changing these decisions if and when they were changed. That basically means that if you want to be a good decision maker, then you've got to be quick at it. Obviously, don't mistake that for rushing decisions, but you've ultimately got to be quick rather than just being really slow and whatnot. You can sometimes be methodical. That definitely works as well. Some of the wealthiest people are definitely more methodical decision makers and can take time, but by and large, as quick as possible, rather than being slow. But then also, once you've made a decision, once you've committed to make a decision, then be slow at changing it unless you really need to. Because if you constantly change your mind and you're constantly changing your ideas, then obviously it'll not only affect you, but if you have other team members involved, then it'll also affect them. So be really conscious of that and be wise of how you make decisions. Being a good decision maker requires you to think. So that's a really key part of it. Most people end up in jobs, or most people end up not making as much money because they don't want to think. They just want to be told what to do rather than think, because it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of willpower and everything like that. So thinking is a really big part of being a good decision maker. Here's some tips to be a better decision maker. And whenever you're actioning something, or actually being able to think it through and then work out whether it's the right idea or not. So tip one is learn from the right mentors and people with experience. If you are wanting to be a better decision maker, then there's no better way than learning from someone who is a good decision maker. Remember, the people that you surround yourself with is who you become. So if you're surrounding yourself with 5 idiots for mentors, then, or 5 really bad decision makers, then you're probably going to be a bad decision maker yourself. If you're surrounding yourself with 5 high quality and wealthy decision makers, chances are within time, you'll become a wealthy and high quality decision maker yourself. So keep that in mind. Make sure that whoever you learn from, if you're wanting to be a better decision maker, then just observe and listen to other people who are good decision makers and just pick up what they do. That's a great way. Another one is trust yourself. Even if you're not, even if you wouldn't consider yourself a good decision maker now, you remember that through specialized knowledge, one of the ways that you can acquire knowledge is through your own experience. And what better way to become a better decision maker than through your own experience as well? Because you learn quicker and you learn better. So as well as learning from other people with experience, you also want to learn from your own. And the only way you can do that is trusting yourself. And even if it ends up not being the right decision, if you trusted yourself and then you learn from it, then you'll get a lot more confidence and you'll get a lot more belief. Especially if you make the right decision, then you'll just get a lot more belief. And remember, principle 2 is faith and belief. So that's a great way to also develop that. You're developing 2 at the same time. So when you're trusting yourself to make a decision, if it pays off and your decision by trusting yourself pays off, then that develops your decision making and it also develops faith. So the 2, like I said, the aim is that as much as possible, you want to synergize all of them, all of these principles with each other. And you can already see it right now that this works on two at the same time, as trusting yourself. Number three is know you're not in it alone. People feel like because they have to think, or if they're the boss or if they're a leader, they feel like they're alone. It doesn't have to be that way. So always seek wise counsel and outside opinions. So these two are kind of similar, but basically this one's more being coached, whereas this one's more getting outside opinions. If you're looking to make a decision, like let's say you're stuck on a certain decision you want to make, whether going A or B is the right route for you, then seek out other people's opinions and not just random people, not like people who don't know what they're doing, but actually wise counsel, and get their opinion on it. So let's say you're struggling between two options and you want to know which one's the best way. You may share your current dilemma with an expert in the area or with a mentor and just get their opinion. They won't tell you what to do. Like, just make sure you tell them not to tell you what to do, but just more give their perspective on it. And since they're detached from the situation, they'll be able to give you a really good perspective, because it's much different when you're there in the moment. You're the one who has all the responsibility and the pressure on you. But for someone who has none of that, none of the attachment to it, none of the expectation or pressure, they'll be able to give a really good outside opinion, and you'll be able to feed off their perspective and be able to consider that with what you're thinking and making the best decision from there. Especially if you can get like 3 perspectives or 2 perspectives from wise people, you can put them together and make the right decision from there. Obviously, you don't want to get like 10 people's opinion, otherwise that will really confuse you. But just pick like 2 people that you trust and go from there, rather than picking like 10 different people. Otherwise, you will be a whirlwind, I can tell you. Being a good decision maker also means weighing up every pro and con of every outcome. It's actually thinking it through and making sure that you're not just rushing into things, but you're actually weighing up the pros and cons to every outcome that comes with your decision. That way you're being more logical, because emotional-based decision makers generally will make the wrong call. So that's why, as much as you can when it comes to decisions, take out the emotion of making the decision and think of the more logical side of it. That's part of being a more structured person, is take out the emotion of the decision and make it into a system of how you do it. So actually weighing up the pros and cons and kind of being a more logical one. Logical is always better. Otherwise, if you're feeling an emotion at the time and you make a decision from that emotion, then yeah, it may be worse than you think. Last one, take time to rest and reflect every day, because decisions are like a mental workout. Think about if you were at the gym and you were training 7 days a week for 5 hours a day. Eventually, if you do that, maybe you'll get strong in the first week, but then after like 2 weeks or so, your body will collapse on you and you'll fall apart and won't be able to cope. So there's no mental workouts aren't any different. If you're making decisions 24/7, especially as a business owner or investor, then you're never taking a rest out of your day to de-wind and reflect or rest your mind. Then eventually your mind is going to collapse and you'll have a mental burnout, and that will stop you from making good decisions in the future. And you may need a lot of time off or something like that. So decisions are like mental workouts, because if you're always thinking and you're always doing that, then you'll eventually burn out. So make sure you have every day, even if it's for just 15 minutes, to sit still or go to the beach or just somewhere where you don't really have to think and where you can just ponder and reflect. And that'll be a really good rejuvenation place for you to be able to get good and be able to go again tomorrow. Here's a simple decision-making process, because I did say that rather than being emotional about it, you want to make it more like a system or logical. Here's a way you can do that. Number 1, first, understand the situation. Understand what you're working with. Number 2, define the problem. So whatever you're looking to make a decision with, know what the problem is that you need to solve. And then from there, define the objective. So what you're going to do to solve the problem, and what you're going to do to go out and achieve the goal, whatever the outcome is. Number 4, diagnose the problem. So what's causing the problem? Look at the problem from every angle and be able to look at it on every angle, like I said. and then be able to work out a solution for it. And then 5 is develop alternatives. So once you've identified the solution for the problem and objectives for it, then also think about other ways that may be better. Rather than just think of one outcome, think of other ways you can do it. Number 6, evaluate the different options you've came up with to solve it. 7, choose the best option. And then number 8, go out and action it. Step 8 is, principle 8 is persistence. Persistence doesn't really take much to explain. We all know what that is, but when you're putting all of these previous 7 principles together and you're actioning it, and you're being smart about it, then the way you're going to do it and achieve the goal is ultimately through persistence and willpower. That's all persistence really is willpower and desire. When combined, they make an irresistible pair and a really strong pair. In thousands of cases, persistence has stood as the difference between success and failure. It's the lack of this quality more than any other that keeps the majority from great accomplishment. And as soon as the going gets tough, they fold. If you've got a plan and system you believe in, just be persistent, results will come. And that comes from organized planning. So once you've actually done a plan, once you've got the knowledge and you're going out and making decisions, the key is just being persistent and consistent at it. Consistency is very key, as you've probably heard a million times before. But once you've got the decisions in place, the organized planning and everything else, it may not come to you as quick as you think it might. And the key is to not get discouraged by it, but keep that faith, keep building on your faith, and then having persistence to keep going at it. Even if you don't have the best plan, or even if you don't have the best system to go out and do it, you will get better results just by being persistent and never giving up or not quitting than someone who has a great plan, who has great skills and great abilities and whatnot, but doesn't have the resilience to keep going. You've probably heard the classic saying is that talent, what is it? Who helped me out here? What is it? Hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. That's it. So yeah, that's a classic saying is that hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. So it doesn't matter whether you're the most talented or skilled person in a certain area, like investing, for example, as long as you're committed to it and as long as you work hard to keep going and you're persistent and you don't give in, you'll beat anyone who's really skilled in the area any day of the week. And I don't say that lightly. Like the most talented investor, if they're not disciplined and they don't have good emotional management and they don't have all of these different other aspects in place, they will lose every time to someone who is not the best investor, who's steady, consistent, good emotional management, good money management, and is disciplined. That type of person will become wealthy rather than a genius who is all over the place and emotional and lacks persistence. So keep that in mind if you're wanting to get good results, that it's all about discipline and persistence. Same thing in sports. Most people who, even a team in sports who has a great system and a great play style, they will nearly always lose to someone who has really high mental strength and a willingness to win more than them. Whoever wants that win more is going to win it regardless of your system. And same thing with wealth is how badly do you want it? Persistence is built upon definite causes, which include definiteness of purpose. So when you actually know your purpose and you have a clear purpose that you're wanting to achieve, then that's one part of persistence, is actually having a really clear purpose. Desire, we've already talked about that. Self-reliance, so the ability to rely on yourself rather than other people. A lot of wealthy people have that ability to be self-reliant and resourceful and not rely on someone else. That's a really key aspect of it. Definiteness of plans, so clear plans, and you've got really intentional with where you're going. Accurate knowledge, so not just outdated knowledge, but actually current and accurate knowledge of the area that you're wanting to work in. Cooperation, the ability to work with others and the ability to inspire others to work with you is another key to persistence, is cooperation. Willpower, basically mental strength and the ability to keep going even when the going gets tough. And habit, or in other words, discipline, being able to keep going and being able to be consistent and be disciplined. Those are the key areas of building up your persistence, working on all of those. Now, to wrap it up from today, Once again, like week one, we went way over than what I thought, but that's fine because we got some good lessons out of this, I would say. So to sum it up all from today, there's 3 key stages to focus on. Number one is the creative side of it, so desire and the ability to birth your idea into reality. So first, getting the dream or getting the picture, the idea, that's your first stage to work on, is your imagination. So work on being creative, being able to tap into your creative energy. If you've got blocked energy or you've got stagnant energy in you, then make sure you work on ways to do that. That can be your action step. I don't really know how to determine that. Only you'd know if your energy feels stagnant and you struggle to think of ideas. If that's you, that'll be your starting point to actually work on that. Whether that means you go out and learn an instrument, or whether it means setting time aside every day to go to the beach or go into the forest or meditate, anything like that, or tantra. That'll be your first step. If you do that, then that way you can focus on birthing ideas. Number 2, after you've birthed the idea, is the structural aspect of it. So being able to plan the idea through organized planning. And then, say if you're naturally creative and you don't really have any problems thinking of the idea, but you struggle more with putting it into a plan or bringing structure to it, that will be your next step. So focus on actually learning how to plan properly, setting time aside to do that, and committing to it. That'll be your action step. Then number 3 is the doing. Once you've put the structure together to bring your idea down to earth, then the next step is to actually go out and do it, actioning the plan. And the way that you do that is by being a better decision maker and being persistent. And there's obviously more that goes into it, but I thought just to keep it simple, that's a way you can think of each of these 3 ones or 4 ones that we went through today is into 3 different phases. So hopefully that helps. Your greatest lessons would like to hear feedback from anyone. If you've got anything, if you've got questions or comments or things that you feel like you can apply to your own life, anything of the kind, would be great to hear from you. And yeah, once again, thanks for listening, guys, and hopefully you took out value from it. And once again, it's my perspective on the book. Everything you learned today and the previous weeks is just my perspective on Think and Grow Rich. So if you haven't read the book yourself, it's always good for you to read it for yourself, because you'll probably take out different things than what I did. But this is just from my own experience and sharing it with you. Yeah, thanks, Christy. I'm glad you enjoyed. Speaking of sitting in silence and finding time for creativity, looks like we've got it right now. So if you're looking to develop your creativity while no one wants to unmute themselves, maybe use this time to be creative. Yeah, thanks, Christine, for that feedback.
As usual, exceptional, Ed.
Yeah, thanks.
It's good because, yeah, like you said, the basics, wealth is a practical thing, you know, and I like Napoleon Hill because it's good to remember that book and why that book was actually done. It was written by Napoleon Hill, had 60 seconds to tell Andrew Carnegie, the richest man in the world, whether he was willing to go and meet the 20 other richest men in the world, along with Andrew Carnegie, and who'd be personally introduced, write a book on the principles of wealth. But Andrew Carnegie would give him no funding towards the book whatsoever. And he said yes within 30 seconds. So it's a really, really good book in terms of the principles and worth applying everything that it says, systematically, practically.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And the replay is stored at the City Awakening website, www.cityawakening.com.au. That's where we upload them. So I'll just put that in there because, yes. In fact, we've also got a YouTube channel now for City Awakening. We had one before, but we just could not, for the life of us, access it. And so what I've done is we've just started a new YouTube channel as of this week, like to follow on from the other one. So yeah, you'll be able to find it on the website, becoming a member, but it's also going to be on YouTube as well. Any comments, Grace, that you want to give before we end? Yep, no, Grace is good. She tells me she's here right now with me. So, Ed, just go to the next slide. Yep. So, look, obviously we continue to grow the work and get everything out there and help and continue to donate and do stuff. And, you know, we're planning to especially increase next month. Next week, Ed will be continuing this series and doing his last session on it. And then next month, we'll be reverting back to Neville Goddard, which I'll be teaching on manifestation and this stuff. But I'm also looking as well, whether in that one or another, about teaching about some of the advanced, what's called city or rishi powers, energy powers. And that's going to be quite exciting for many of you, just learning how what I see as the future of the next 25 years of healing and energy work and spiritual awakening. And we're going to be doing a lot more of that kind of stuff and really teaching about the future of it. Just then I was doing some work with Grace just for a brief period, because she was getting some soreness with somewhere, and we went through and did some of the stuff and applying all the stuff that I'd learned with homeopath energy, and we were both feeling incredible work, and it made a difference. So there's a big future to energy work and healing, and finances, though, to have that work is really, really important. So, you know, if you already tithe and give, that's great. If you don't, but you're blessed by today, then here's the details to, you know, support the work in some form and give a donation. And we look forward to seeing you all next week, everyone. So thanks for coming, and bye for now.